Welcome to Chart Chess Club's YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going over a game played by Savielly Tartakower with the white pieces. All right, so here we go. Starts out with pawn to c4, knight to f6, knight to c3, pawn to e6, and now Tartakower has a choice to make. It's a choice that every English opening player has to make. Do they want to stay in the English opening, or do they decide, you know what, let's just grab the center, let's play pawn to d4, and transpose back into a queen's gambit, right? So if we play d4 now, this would be totally fine. We'd probably see a Nimzo Indian just because the pawn and knight are already in this position. But we could just as easily play pawn to d5. Now we transpose back into the normal queen's gambit declined. But instead, Tartakower decides, no, let's say an English theory. And one great move that you could play here is pawn to e4. And if you play pawn to e4, black really has a few responses, but they knew the most forcing line. You can play pawn c5, you play e6, but they play d5, and now flank pawns take center pawn, so c takes, e takes, and from here we have pawn to e5, and that's really the only move that's acceptable in this position. If you were to trade, the problem with that would be that you're giving yourself an isolated queen's pawn, and you have no compensation for it. I mean, if you play knight takes, this would be really bad, because the queen's in the middle of the board, and it's just going to sit there. No one's going to chase that queen. There's no more knights that can go to c3. There's no c-pawn. There's no e-pawn, right? So that would be really bad. So white would just get no compensation. So instead, we're going to push the pawn, and if the knight goes back, I could play pawn to d4. Black only has one move in this position. It's a very tricky move, and maybe if we don't know it, we're not going to play it. But it's pawn to d5, and it looks like we're just racing to see who can grab more pieces. Well, white has the first move, so maybe we'll win a pawn. Here we go. Capture, 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 and we're ready to promote, but black finds check, so we have to capture back. Taking with the bishop is the best move. I've also played a game immediately after seeing this game. At my last tournament, I played queen takes on d2, and this worked out very well. We just trade queens because it comes with check again. And then when the bishop captures, we can castle and defend the pawn that was being attacked by the bishop, and now we're just in an endgame. So both of these are fine. And they both worked out in both Tartakower's game and my own. But over here we had bishop takes, and now queen to c2, knight to c6, maybe not necessary, knight to f3, also a move that isn't necessary. And I would like you to pause the video, and right now is the moment of truth. Can you identify the weaknesses for both sides, and then find the best move for black? Okay, so in this game, friends continued with bishop to g4, trying to attack the knight, maybe getting double pawns, just developing another bishop in an open game. And this loses the slight advantage that black had, and now white is completely winning if they find the best move. What you need to do is say, wait a minute, it's a very open game. We got two open files, a semi-open C file and a semi-open G file. This open file for the kings is going to be really, really bad. I don't want the rooks to get over here and start checking. I don't want the queens to start checking. These bishops are going to be monsters if they get out. So both sides need to commit to castling. They got to figure out how they can castle. And yes, both castles are broken, but right now castling queenside is the fastest for white and castling kingside is the fastest for black. So what black needed to play here after knight to f3, which is a bad move, white probably should have just castled, is queen to e7, check. This little move would force bishop to e2, and now that bishop is pinned to the king. And the king can't castle kingside or queenside because it would lose the bishop, and so it's a little stuck. If we try to play like bishop to e3, suddenly this knight goes to g4, and it kicks the queen. The bishop used to be guarding that square. Now the knight is very safe, it's guarded by the queen. And the queen still has to stay nearby because this bishop is going to take the pawn if the queen leaves. So queen c1 is a very ugly move. Definitely something we don't want to be playing here. Black will develop naturally. They've already castled their king, and white still has to castle, move their queen out of the way, try to get back into the game. So the best continuation would be rook c1, and then black can play whatever they want, really. And then if we try bishop e3 again, now we're ready to castle. The queen is defending the e2 bishop. Well, we simply lose a pawn here after check. Here, capture, capture, take. And you could try to claim that this is okay for white. Maybe they'll win their pawn back somehow using their rooks. but, black definitely has the advantage. So queen e7 is a must-play move, making use of the fact that neither side has castled, and we need to castle quickly. So this move was missed. Bishop g4 was played instead. And the problem with that is white's going to castle now. Now it's too late for black to do anything. That king is going to be stuck in the center of the board for the rest of the game. In the game, we just had capture, capture. Yes, that creates double isolated pawns, but we don't care. I'm not going to say that very often, but we are going to say it when it's a very open game, and we have the bishop pair. Bishops don't really care about pawns, right? So double isolated pawns, well, that just clears a way for my bishop to get out, and my rooks are very, very happy, right? If they tried to castle, then because my king is safe, we could just start attacking right away. So Tartakower would be able to play something like knight to g4, and this is just checkmate. How are we going to stop checkmate? There's no good way. The queen can't take the knight. Bishop would just take back. We could try playing pawn to f5. That's the only move I see that's going to defend against checkmate right away. Now pawn to f3, bishop goes back, and then knight goes here. We start picking up some pieces, so very, very bad stuff. So that's really not an option. They really missed their chance to get back in this game. And then after capture, capture, which was played in the game, you definitely can't castle now for like 100 reasons. One, rook g1 looks really, really bad, especially because it's coming with this bishop and the discovered attack. The bishop could also go here, so just all bad stuff, right? Too late to castle. So where does black play? Well, black has to play actively, right? So knight comes out, and now if you're playing as white, forcing moves. Forcing moves, forcing moves, forcing moves. If that black king gets the castle to the queen side safely, it's going to be really, really bad. Also, we do have the double isolated pawn, which we said was not a big deal, but if this goes to an endgame, that might be a problem. So we got to find some very tactical ideas, and Tartakower does that pretty easily in this game. So we have check, queen comes to e7, capture, capture, bishop to b4 check, and the only move in this position is king to e8. That is not a move we want to play, but everything else is bad. Okay, the worst moves are king to f8 and king to d6, because you're not allowed to play those moves because of the bishop. Everything else is just as bad, but for different reasons. If you were to play like d7 or d8, for example, either of these moves would be a problem because the rook is pinned, and now the black rooks cannot get to the d file to defend the knight. So the bishop's guarding the knight. We could just double attack this knight and win, but not if we play bishop c3. If you play bishop c3, they actually defend with the c5 pawn, and it's even game because the king's actually getting out of the center. So make sure to take your time. Don't mess up. If they move the king here or here, you just play bishop to c5, and now the pawn can't play that move, and we're just going to pick up the knight. So that doesn't work. What if they try running up the board? Well, if you go somewhere like this, you're going to have problems with bishop to king to f6, just because you're disconnecting the bishop guarding the knight, so that's not going to be good. And then if king to e6, which is normally something I would recommend playing, king to e6, because it's the end game, we're trying to get our king up, very active, maybe go after these pawns. But it's not good because these bishops are so active, the rooks are so active, and black simply does not have enough defenders. There's a million and one ways to either grab pieces or get checkmate. Here's one of them, rook to e1 check. And they try to shuffle to the side to try to defend themselves. Bishop, bishop. And again, it looks like the king's actually pretty active. Oh, it's going to start taking some pawns. Let's attack the bishop. Check, capture, check. And here's a very nice checkmate. Just one of like a million checkmates that could occur, or you're going to pick up the knight, or you just get your rooks to the 7th rank. The king is just too slow. So king e8 had to be played. And now you can find the next forcing move, which is a brilliant move. There's like 2 brilliant moves in this game. This one is by far the best one. You can find this. Congrats. All right, the move is bishop to b5 check. Just give up the bishop. The king is sitting all by itself, and if the knight takes, then the rooks check the king and keep it in place. There's only one move to be played here, which is to block and allow checkmate. So very nice checkmate. Obviously, his opponent did not fall for that. They played pawn to c6. Check. King is having trouble moving again. Knight has to come back, and now let's just win a pawn. So attack the knight, We can't defend it. That king literally cannot move. So we bring in the rook, capture, capture, don't capture with the rook. If you capture with the rook, it's going to be really bad. You're going to lose your bishop, so capture with the king, capture, capture, and we win our pawn. Now, how do you win this game? If you went over this first game with the Capablanca game, right, where he gives up 2 pawns to get his rook on the 7th rank, we know that a rook on the 7th rank or the 2nd rank is worth as much as 1 pawn at least, and we're up a pawn right now, so great. Bishop takes, we take a pawn, and now bishop to d4, and now the second brilliant move of the game. White is completely winning. They got their rook on the 7th rank. They have an extra pawn. How can we keep grabbing material? Well, white finds bishop to c5. And the idea is that this black bishop is being overworked because it's defending this pawn from the rook. But more importantly, it has to stay on this diagonal to defend the rook from this skewer. So with that in mind, if you play bishop c5, it is a free bishop, but then we would just play check and we would pick up the free rook once the bishop moves. So the king comes to attack, rook takes, and again, we're threatening the same thing, so we can't take the bishop. Attacks again, bishop takes, and now black gets a pin, and they're going to move this pawn, so there's no point in playing like rook to a4, but that's fine. Let's just grab another pawn, and now a very nice ending. The king is trying to stop the pawn from promoting. That's not going to happen because the pawn blocks the king and the rook blocks the king. This is going to promote. And of course, the king can move up the board and help with that as well. There's a few other ways, we could go about this. We could try something, something where the king goes like this, the rook goes like this. But this is not going to work either. If the king goes anywhere here, obviously we just check and push. But now we could play rook to a8, and we're going to promote. If the rook takes, we get the skewer again, and we win the game. So just a beautiful game, and it really evolved around 2 things. One, the opening's very fun. This game was played in 1933. After seeing this game, I tried out this opening and ended up winning my next tournament because of it. So nice that opening theory hasn't changed too much. And then the other thing is, if you notice that there's an open e-file around the king, make sure to castle, even if it's scary, right? I mean, the black's king side was broken, white's queen side was broken, but you still have to commit to castling, because if not, the queens are going to come in, the bishops are going to come in, and more importantly, the one piece that almost never gets played in an opening, the rooks, are also going to cause problem. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for more chess content.